Welcome back, folks, to the conversation series on Get a Grip on Lighting. On today's show, Henrik Clausen speaks with Amardeep Dugar about the poetry of lighting. You know, we're really happy with what Henrik has done over the last little while, and he's kind of taken the conversation to the next level, Greg.
That's right. Always has great guests and great insight to hear from.
Oh, yeah. Before you get into this conversation, though, we want to tell you a little bit about Keystone Technologies. First, you go to KEYSTONETECH.com, the light made easy. Greg, for a whole host of lighting upgrades, retrofits, what do they got there, man?
Yeah, well, light made easy is what it's all about. So every single light fixture out there, just about that you need, Keystone's got something for it. Whether they retrofit it or give you a new fixture, and they also make it easy by having a lot of their product color selected, wattage selectable, so you can buy one SKU and have 3, 6 different types of lights all out of one fixture.
And don't forget that the National Association of Innovative Lighting Distributors, that's NAILD.org, is hosting its convention September 13th through 16th in Dallas, Texas. That's right. Come on down if you're a nailed distributor. Or if you're a distributor, can non-nailed members attend the conventions, Greg?
They should.
I think so.
And do.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
can. So come on down. But for right now, we want you to enjoy Henrik and Amardeep on the conversation series on Get a Grip on Lighting.
Hi everybody, it's Henrik Clausen from Fagerhult Lighting Academy again. I'm really happy to be back at the podcast series, the conversation series, and today we have with us Amardeep Dugar, an old friend who works as a lighting designer in India. He is a PhD student from Victoria University in Wellington back in 2007, and he graduated before that and had a master in architectural lighting. So this man has been an inspiration for me, a good friend for many years, and I'm really pleased to have you here on the show. Welcome, Amardeep. Good to see you.
Thank you, Henrik, for this invitation, and thank you, Get a Grip on Lighting, for hosting me here. Great to see
We
you.
we will see if we can share some thoughts, ideas, philosophies about how lighting should be and what we can do for lighting, being manufacturers and being lighting designers. And I would like to go back to the first time we met. Do you remember when that was?
I clearly remember that. I think it was PLDC 2007 in London. We had met with another very good colleague from Fagerhult, and we were having this, I think it was coffee or breakfast at this
Okay.
conference center.
I think it was, but I don't remember whether it was one or the other. But before that, I already heard about you from Kit Cottle, a friend I have in Wellington University, and Werner Osterhaus, a professor in Denmark. So how did you come in contact with people from Denmark and from Australia, you being Indian in background?
Interesting question. I was in Germany at that time doing my master's, and during my master studies, my professor, Professor Romhild, had told me that I think you should consider doing a PhD in lighting design. And I was doing these random searches for universities that offer PhDs, and I came across the Lighting Research Center and some another university at that time in UK, and I also came across this university in Wellington where Kit Cuttle and Werner Osterhaus were professors at the same time, the same university. Although Werner has moved to Denmark now, he was in New Zealand at that time. And that one thing led to another, and I got my scholarship and went to New Zealand to do my PhD, and here I am.
So you applied for a scholarship at the university in Wellington.
Yes.
Did you
I
did you
applied for
already
the
have?
university. Pardon me?
No, carry on.
I had applied for the university for studies, and for the scholarships, I had applied to the New Zealand government because Education New Zealand offers these postdoctoral research scholarships, and I think they only have 20 in number every year. And I was the lucky 20 who got the full scholarship to go and study in New Zealand.
And did you already then know what you dreamt about doing for your PhD, or how did you come about that?
I did have a very vague idea about what I wanted to do, but the PhD is something which you need to have a very narrowed down window. And that's where I got to know of that research, especially a PhD research, has to be a very focused, very tight focus kind of research. My focus was very broad, and I should thank my university because that's when I got to know that you need to really shorten your focus. So I had a very vague idea that I want to do something about interactivity and lighting, but it's only after I went into the university and I started my PhD that I had to really narrow my focus down to something which is really much more concrete.
You know, we talked about you coming to Copenhagen and maybe even living with me and my family for doing the study. I'm still sad that it didn't turn out that way. That could have been a stunning experience, at least for
Yes,
us.
yes, yes,
That
yes.
would,
I know. It would have been a great experience, but hopefully, life is still long enough. I'm sure there'll be more
yeah.
such opportunities.
When you went to university in Wellington, did you have an idea about what you wanted to do with your PhD, or did it develop there? And how did it go about?
I did have a very broad idea about I wanted to bring this interactive aspect to lighting controls. And I always found lighting controls to be very fascinating. But having worked in the profession for a couple of years, I did find out that people were struggling with the lighting control, the interfaces, they were very complicated. So I knew I wanted to do something about it. But as I got the admission and I went there, and I my first few interactions with my supervisors, they did tell me that you need to really narrow your focus down to something really, really, really tight focus on something specific that you're going to add to that body of knowledge in lighting. So yes, a broad idea to a very narrow scope idea is what my initial years in the PhD was all about.
At that time when you did it, we said about 4% of the installed lighting control systems in Europe were actually used. They were set to some silly settings, on off 25 and 50% or something. They didn't utilize it in any way, and we really hoped to increase the quality of light that we could use your input, and that's why we talked about this, like it should feel like switching on a tap or taking a door handle or something. Could you elaborate a little bit more about your initial ideas?
Yes, I was when I was parallelly searching, I did find that lighting did not have much of literature available. So I searched on another very interesting subject called interaction design. Interaction design really talks about the sensory appeal, how you can bring in this haptic touch and feel to this, and the whole idea of getting a grip on lighting is when I got to know about this interaction design. And surprisingly and interestingly, we're talking about this in this platform. So my whole PhD was all about getting a grip on lighting as to how to bring this tangible effect to lighting. So that's when I worked on a manual control, embodied control, how with body movements, light would start interacting with human beings.
I remember some of your first ideas you presented for me at that time, some of the thoughts you've had where you were wanted to use your body for it, and how did you end up with whatever you ended up with? Could you share that with us?
Again, as mentioned earlier, when you start with a PhD, you have all these exciting ideas of how you can make things possible. But as reality comes and hits you really hard, you're trying to understand how do you scientifically make it possible. Because what is important as a researcher is that doing a research experiment in a very scientific manner is the first thing. But the experiment should be done in such a way that if there's another researcher who wants to repeat that experiment, he's able to repeat that same experiment again. So repeatability is also very important. So that's when I found that all these crazy ideas of cannot be repeated if I'm not done it in a very logical manner. So I had to really tone it down to something which is more realistic, more plausible, and with the time frame and the budget constraints that I had during my education and research, I had to bring it to a very plausible manner of doing it. Although it was worth all the effort, But yes, I do have a lot of other exciting ideas that I want to try and implement with my research still.
It's funny that you mention it, because when we had the conversation with Kevin Hauser, he pointed out the big importance in getting a paper published in Leukos, for instance, that you really have all the stuff, and just the period that went from when you did it to now. Now we have to put in spectral distributions, all kind of things. We have to be much more thorough. So I don't think it's become easier in any way, but it's really important to understand that we stand on each other's shoulders, and none of us are like, whoa, I got these philosopher's stones. So it's super cool. I was just thinking, how did it end? What were your? I have some notes here about the iPod of the time, the iPod generation.
Yeah. At that time, iPod was something which was the thing that was happening. It was one of the most coolest contraption that was created by Apple, and everybody wanted to use the iPod. So, and for me, what I was looking at was how does an interface give you the actual image or whatever the lighting control that you're going to be doing. So, and the only feasible interface at that time was a tablet with a screen. Although it gives you a visual feedback, what it lacks is that tactility or tangibility, because it's still a touch. You still have to touch it. You don't have that gripping sensation to it. So although it was a very flawed interface, it was the best at that time, 10 years back when I completed my research. And that's what I said, that if the interface could actually give you a feedback of what the actual scene would be, that would be make it easier for the user to control and select that scene for that person.
Do you think that would help us at the end of the day to save energy and hence reduce carbon footprint if we somehow could make our controls more fun to interact with, or more intuitive, or something? Would that be able to be a part of the energy savings that we are fighting so hard for in the world today?
Actually, yes, because now we have this whole thing called Alexa and Siri coming and telling you. So, what if Alexa and Siri could tell you, hey, Henrik, I think you're using 80% of the light. You might want to reduce it by another 10% so that you will bring in some more energy savings. If this kind of artificial intelligence was built in to your interface, and it makes it more fun and playful, and it could just say, hey, by reducing 10% you've saved 40 trees, that would
Yeah.
actually make you want to do that. So yes, that could be done.
I worked with another scientist, a designer, who wanted the fixture mechanically to take a more ugly shape the more energy it used. So it was a beautiful visual experience to look at the fixture with a nice light distribution when it was saving energy. And the more you want to squeeze out, the more ugly the fixture should get. Would that find into your thought frame as well?
That is definitely a good way of looking at it, because that's when it'll be but again, beauty and ugly is a very subjective thing. What may be beautiful for you might not be so beautiful for another person. So that is the only thing that I'm a bit concerned about.
And you are the guy who said to try to drag poetics into lighting, and now I'm trying, and you're sort of like saying that. What was that all about with the poetics in lighting design?
Yeah, that was a spin-off paper that came out because me having a very strong research brain, and when I came back to India, I wanted to set up a research laboratory and do only research. Soon I realized that research doesn't help me pay my bills. So I had, with a lot of frustration, I had to set up my practice. I would say I still own a lighting design practice, which was started by accident. And my practice is called Lighting Research and Design because I give more importance to research and less to design. But hey, design helps me pays my bills. So I kept doing these projects, and I kept building a lot of projects as case studies. And what I realized was that there's lighting design is very much like language. Lighting design is a compositional system where you compose a space, you have illuminance levels, you have contrast ratios. That's a very strong compositional system. Poetry is also a compositional system. The manner in which where words are built around each other. So I said, is there a connection between poetics and lighting design? That was one basis that I had. And the second build-up that I had was lighting design. When I talk to so many clients, when they have this, they're always looking for experiential richness. A client wants to come into a space, they say, I want to feel great when I come inside. That's the lighting I want to do. So again, poetry has this experiential richness. So I bring this idea of building compositional system, experiential richness, and is there poetics of lighting design? And that's where I built my research paper. And it just happened by accident. And it so happened to be one of the most read papers, which is which is a good thing.
Yeah, I noticed I have 431 downloads recently, so it looks like you hit something there. But when I looked at some of your other papers, you had an article called "Glass Architecture is Light Architecture," and I'm wondering, is that about dragging in daylight, and how does that is that kind of a is there some poetry in dragging in daylight, or what did you think about in that case?
That was about one specific project, but
Okay.
whenever I write about a project, I look at it in terms of what this written piece would have for future generations, because they need to take out something. That is, if you're reading an article, it should have some kind of a lasting impression. So, glass is a very difficult element to light. We all know you can't light glass; it just reflects it, or light. It just transmits light. Sorry, it reflects too, but transmits light. And daylight is just amazing. When you have something of glass architecture, then you don't need to worry about lighting it up, because during the day, light will come in, and during the night, whatever light is on the inside comes onto the outside. So that is a very exciting thing. It can be a challenging thing, but challenges excite me, is what I would say. So that's what the whole architecture for glass architecture and light architecture is all about.
Very often it's always a problem about heat radiation getting in, forced cooling, and there are so many problems. It's wonderful to hear that you just said only beautiful things. There was nothing like this is difficult, or you accept it's difficult, but you didn't neglect it in any way. Because we've worked with the university in Copenhagen, where I also teach now a little bit. It's about a system called double dynamic lighting, where we actually try to find and define the dynamics of daylight and be inspired, so that we don't do static electric lighting, but we actually want to mimic, not mimic, but be the dynamic of daylight changes, move that into the interior, so that we get for hopefully the quality of it. It was a huge project. It was us, Sumtable, Tridonic, Iguzzini doing it together, because it was such a design idea. I don't know if you've read the paper, but what do you think spontaneously? Could we be inspired by daylight and by nature in some way and really drag it in and use it?
I don't think you remember. We discussed this project in one of the Frankfurt fairs at the Fagerhult booth, when this project was just in its
Okay.
initial stages. So during one of our meetings, we did discuss this, and I also saw your presentation, which you gave on, I think it was the SLL webinar series,
Yeah.
Society of
Yes.
Light and Lighting. And I did see that presentation, and I also read that paper. So it's not just you reading my papers; even I'm reading your papers.
That's nice. Then we had two people tapping each other's backs. No, but what do you think about it? What would you, when you read it with an open mind? What do you think? And yet, I'm not
See,
fishing for compliments. I'm really thinking
no,
about.
I'm of daylight is the most fascinating thing, is the most amazing thing. And the fact that you've tried to bring daylight into an interior space is something which I have thought of in some of my projects too. Even in the Poetics paper, if you read, there's one of the case studies, I've done something similar. So this whole everlasting, this emotiveness is the first aspect of poetry. And daylight has the most amazing emotions that would have, because it changes, it's never static. Dawn to dusk, dawn to dusk. There are so many emotions, millions, billions of emotions that come through just with daylight. And the fact that you want to capture it into an electric lighting system. You can't mimic it. Face it,
No,
it's idiot.
no,
We
no.
can't mimic it. But we can surely try to uh, get inspired, get something into it. And I think that whole double dynamic concept coming into an interior space, especially a boring office space, what else could an employee ask for? So I think that
No.
is brilliant concept.
No, it's I was really honestly surprised about the levels of dynamic. I know that the outdoor light is changing, but when you start measuring and documenting the changes in spectral distribution, in intensity, in directionality, it's enormous. It's so many variables, and it's so profound. So sometimes when I share some of the findings with people, they say, "Nah, it's just a gray day. It's all the same." But it's really not. It's massive amount of
Yeah,
changes.
yeah,
And
yeah,
when we move in, we had a Danish artist I worked with many years ago, and he said, when we move inside, the world stop rotating. And it's actually a very beautiful way of saying that nothing happens. There are no shadows, no textures. If you do bad lighting design, it's just very boring.
yeah.
So it's that's why it's so inspiring to get your input also to how do we interact with the lighting, how do we get influenced, how do we make noise, music, whatever, change it. We had a setting in London, and you just say, I've probably told you because I share everything with you, Amardeep. We had a setting where we changed the color of a wall in an office building in London, depending on the traffic on the street. If it were empty, it was green. Lots of cars, it was red. So people could get a feel by the color subliminal. It's time to go now. It's starting to become yellowish. There's more traffic. And I think we lack so much. There's so much we can do with lighting instead of having an on-off switch on the wall
Yeah,
and creating 500 lux.
yeah,
Could
yeah,
you
yeah.
what is your wildest dreams today about? What would you want to achieve if you just could go out there and do it?
Um, uh, I would say I think it'll be great if the architecture itself start becoming luminous surfaces, because we need to move away from light fixtures. What if we could have walls, ceilings? Biophilic lighting is something which is my most subject close to heart. What if we could have plants that are in there, which are just also not just plants, they're just light sources, and they rejuvenate the place, they oxygenate the place, and also bring in a lot of light. So that is something which I want to look at. Bioluminescence is what excites me. What if we could use the organic, all the living beings of this Mother Earth, planet Earth, as light sources within our whole architectural biome? That is something which is will be exciting for me.
That's a wild dream. I I really love it. Thank you for sharing. A thing that I have come to discuss with people when you remember like 10, 15 years ago, we talked about the first OLED. We would have wallpapers that would illuminate. And I was so afraid that we would lose the shadows, that we would lose the sensation of depth between per people and the wall if there was no shadow pattern. What do you think about if everything becomes luminant? It would be like being inside a opaque box is my nightmare on that. But where you have such a beautiful way of saying it.
See, if you look at nature, sun is a object of light. But when it, by the time it comes to, there's a lot of shadow pattern. There's trees and there's rocks, there's mountains. So by luminous surface doesn't mean you have everything that are illuminated. All I want to say is just moving away from a light fixture. But idea is when you have a skylight or an artificial ceiling, what if the ceiling itself has patterns of flowers or patterns of leaves, so the light that comes through is like a rainforest where you're walking through, there's shadow and light that is coming through. So that is something which I was trying to say. So you try to mimic nature, you try to imitate nature, but then you also try to avoid a light fixture, is what I'm trying to say.
I think sometimes when I think about it, that the universe is actually everything, including the entire universe, is flooded with light, and there's only objects that create shadows. So the universe outside is not dark, it's probably extremely well lit. It's just when we put objects, a moon, a satellite, or anything in between. So it's such a wonderful thing to think that there's light everywhere. unless we
Yeah.
shadow it away, I think.
I read a blog recently which says that everywhere it's darkness. Whatever light source we have, they are just dark suckers. So whenever you switch on a light source, it sucks away the dark, and it gets so filled up with dark, and then it becomes. That was an interesting concept, which I think is
I've,
worth exploring.
I haven't thought about it that way. Must admit that. So, so when you let's just stick at the luminescent wallpaper and the white box. So if we talk about layers of light, we talk about Kelly or whatever, where we try to build up all that. I'm still having challenges in understanding how we should do that if we integrate it into the architecture. But it's probably just me having limited visions in that. Could you share what some of your ideas would be? Because I know you work also with layers of light as I do.
Yes. Thing is, a lot of times we are so caught up with the light fixture and the luminaire, we try to tend forget the idea that when you talk about ambient illuminance, because I think that's what ambient illuminance is, where people say that if it's a huge large surface, but within that
Yeah,
ambient illuminance you could have a point source which is producing more focused light. So if you have a ceiling which is illuminated, within the ceiling if you create patterns where there are point sources which create sharper shadows which create that, so that will bring in that play of brilliance, it will bring in that focal glow
yeah.
and the ambient luminance. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a light fixture doing that, it could be just contrast ratio that you're playing in.
I was proofreading a book from a very good friend who is a scientific journalist, and he had an interview with Olafur Eliasson, who is an artist from Iceland, I think, or of the Faroe Islands, who does a lot of things. And they we had this discussion about the light in the fixture and the light out of the fixture, because very often we think that architects looks at the light in the fixture and not so much the light out of the fixture. And we lighting designers, we do the opposite. And when people choose a fixture, it's unfortunately in many cases the design of the mechanical design, not the optical design, but the mechanical design of the fixture. How do you explain to your customers why you choose something? Because to me, they sometimes say, I don't want that, that's ugly. And it's something you can debate, but the light that comes out might be very beautiful.
That's precisely a problem that I'm facing for a current project where the architect has selected these light fixtures because she's very obsessed with the form factor of the light fixture. But the trouble is, the light that comes out of it is very glary. It creates these hot spots, and it just doesn't do the job. So it's important that you educate these architects. So what I have done is I've done a mock-up where I've put both these light fixtures next to each other and asked the architect to experience the light under both these. How do you feel under
Yeah,
this light? How do you feel under that light? And after that, hopefully she's able to make that decision that I think light output is a lot more important than the actual form factor of that
yeah.
light fixture.
But you make a good point in experience in it. It's so important that we tell our young people and our old people too that light is something you experience. You can't see it on a data sheet, and you can't you have to make it happen. There was something in the thing you said about. Well, I lost it again. I didn't manage to write it down, but the education stuff, I know it's very much on my heart, and I know it's on your heart as well. And you thank your university in such a nice way. When we started, you were grateful. And what I'm truly grateful is when I reached out to you and said I need to do these educational programs, and you said stop, 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 stop. Everything is on the IES page, and that's probably the best thing you've ever said to me, because it's a massive amount of knowledge, and I think we should also in this podcast encourage people to go there, because you were so right. It's really, really good. But tell me about your association to the IES. Why would an Indian gentleman be a member of the North American Illuminating Engineering Society? I'm a member too, so I have my idea. But what about you?
Yeah, that's a very nice question. And I became a member of the IES in 2011. mainly because I was looking for knowledge, and at that time it was the IES NA. And when I had submitted a paper to the IES, it was part of my PhD research, and my paper got accepted. I had requested them for a scholarship, and IES was very kind enough to sponsor my travel to go and present a paper there. And ever since, my association has only been increased with the IES. I've been a part of several of their committees for writing the standards. I've been a part of their awards jury, one of the online jurors for the award. And recently, I have been elected to the board of directors for the IES. So, what I really liked about the IES was it was IES NA, but over the years it dropped the NA. So it's no
What was
longer
the NA? No.
North America.
Okay,
It just became the
got it.
IES because they've realized that IES needs to reach out. It's an authority, but it is an authority of knowledge, and knowledge cannot be limited to one continent. Knowledge has to go spread all across the world. And that's something which I'm ever so grateful to the IES. And then they've reached out and been very inclusive in having an Asian, as I think I'm probably the first Asian to be on the board of
Yeah.
directors. So that's been
I
good.
think you are, and I really wish you all the best and congratulations. It was a really
Thank you.
impressive effort, and it shows, for instance, companies like Fagerhult that we can have R&D and we can have researchers everywhere. They don't have to sit next to me in my office. We have to
Exactly.
work globally, and what we are doing right now, being recorded in Canada, talking from Sweden with you in India, it just shows that it works. And I think the pandemic was a smack in the face for us to show everybody this is how we should do it. What do
Yes,
you think about
exactly.
the, let's say, education wise and the challenges that came with the pandemic?
The pandemic was actually a blessing in disguise in a lot of ways for me because I was able to take a lot of time in preparing recorded lectures. And recorded lectures are so good because then you can just present them in different places. And I was able to reach out and like this, do more podcasts, create a little bit more because organizing an event was becoming a challenge in terms of logistics, traveling around. But these online events, okay, we do have these fatigue of looking at a screen for too long. But if you have short, bite-sized presentations and doing a great job, shorter ones, they're actually very good. So pandemic was very good for me as a thing. And I also
I
became
think
a
it.
yoga instructor during the pandemic.
Okay, maybe do you make online classes?
Yes.
Maybe. It's funny because last time we had a recording with a guy in Australia and he was paragliding. So it's always cool to see that something else comes out of these conversations. It's not just now we should be into yoga as well.
Yeah.
I would just like to touch because you're very technology based and I know you really know what you're talking about. Could we address a little bit about lighting software? What do you think? What's the how can we use that in the best way?
Lighting software, essentially you need to just identify that it's a tool. It is not it's a designing aid. It helps you in design, but it cannot substitute for design. As long as you're aware of this reality, then lighting software can be the best way of expressing all your design. But what I find a lot of designers, especially the young designers, fall into the trap is that, oh, I'm a lighting designer. Why do you say that? Because I know this lighting software.
Yeah.
So just because you know a lighting software doesn't make you a lighting designer. Lighting design requires a lot more creative pursuits that you need to have a look at. And then the lighting software as a tool can just be an aided tool to help you present your ideas, present your concepts. So as long as you use lighting software as a great tool, BIM I think is a very good way. And with this whole interactivity, what I also imagine is that if BIM and interactivity would come in, a lighting designer could be based in Sweden, and with simulation tools the lighting designer could control the lighting of a space in India, visualize it, and actually control the different elements with the layers of lighting. So that would save a lot of traveling from back and forth, is what I think.
There are two things I want to address on this one. The first one is on Tuesday, I have two students who's taking their masters, and they had made a paper on cultural lighting differences because they wanted to do a tool for lighting designers. They said sitting in London, doing something in Mumbai, and finding out not to do the major mistakes that when we started we needed to do sometimes. And I think I've just read their paper because they're going to their exam in a few days, and it's really interesting. Have you come across anybody who is really good at that? And what does it take? What would you say if a person had that skill or that interest or that passion? What is it that makes us good at working globally?
Uh, Understanding the cultural nuances is very important. I mean, whenever you design a landmark building, especially, one project that I like to cite is the Grand Mosque in Abu Dhabi. The way the lighting design has been handled so creatively, it changes. The facade lighting changes from a dark blue to a lighter blue and white because it caters to the different phases of the moon, and that is something which is very subtly, very creatively done as a facade lighting concept. So lighting designers need to be sensitive about the culture of a place, and if that cultural sensitivity comes in, already I think half the problem of lighting design is solved. Then it's only a matter of getting the whole technology together.
Yeah, I think the technology is becoming the lesser thing. We don't discuss that as much more because now we actually have a magic box. We can almost solve everything. The problem here is coming up with the good ideas and the good
Yes,
arguments, because we are in a position as manufacturers that if you come up with a dream, we almost assure we can make the stuff for it. The problem is finding the dream. And
yes,
what I
yes,
try to tell my young people is you need to put love in the light, need to love the people you're doing the lighting for, and not trying to squeeze their money out of the bags. That's another story. But we really need to understand that we can influence and enhance their day every day if we do this right. So how do you go about that when you, for instance, as you just said, that you described the architect who should, where you would try to do a small crash course in visualizing the two products, comparing them. How would you go about it on a broader level if we should let people understand it?
Education is key, is what I would say, because although there's a lot of lighting design happening, more than half the world doesn't know what the actual lighting designer does. I mean, in a
Yeah.
country like India where I'm working, a lighting design is just an unheard entity. When I say I'm designing light, they say, "Oh, you design light fixtures?" I said, "No, design lighting fixtures is just one side of it." So you actually need to educate. So my motto every time I meet my first client is go with an idea of educating what lighting is all about, what lighting can do to your place, why you need to hire a lighting designer, what can good lighting do to your business, what can good lighting do to your home, what can good lighting do to your school, and every
Hmm.
establishment. Light touches every part. So education is key, and how you go about is very important. Business is an aspect, but that's a parallel aspect. Education is more important, is what I think.
Yeah. It's not a quick fix. It's not like something,
No,
because many of us has worked with it for many years, and a lot of people I meet just ask for a simple solution, and it's you need to be very experienced to do a simple solution. So it's
simple
a catch
solution.
22 somehow.
Exactly, exactly. And people don't want to pay for those simple solutions. That's the worst bit.
Yeah, that's the worst part of it. Do you think that we can sell lighting in the metaverse? Or now let me put it that way. I've worked with a gaming company who does computer games and sort of like World of Warcraft type, not that, but something else. And they also require lighting design because they are very good at putting music, movement in there. And they say, we want a dramatic thing here. And then we do the lighting design. So who's going to do lighting design in the metaverse when everybody's going to meet there? What do you think about that? Is that something we should do as lighting designers?
I think that will be a very exciting prospect for us as lighting designers to start designing for the metaverse, because a lot of things, like I said, concepts when we design, they don't get realized. Half of the concept don't get realized because either there's a technological constraint or there's a budget constraint. But in the metaverse, I doubt there's any technological constraints. I doubt there's any budget constraints because you can build it. It's a virtual world.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think that would be definitely great if lighting
But
designers could explore that world.
I played a lot of World of Warcraft and a lot of Counter Strike, and I was so annoyed about the shadows. And I said to my son, I simply don't want to be here anymore because the shadows makes me feel that I'm not in a real world. Everything else is fine. Water is running, trees are there, people are moving, but the light was just hilariously wrong. Now it's becoming much better. Unreal Engine, they are eminent in making lighting now. They are really putting IES distributions in so we can do or real light distributions. So I think we should maybe think about how we can help and how we can do. And that's here comes my question: do you think we as designers working globally could mail something for VR glasses or AR or anything so that we could use these tools to be better at working globally?
Most certainly, because see, the laws of light will remain the same. Technology will come and go. Laws of physics is always going to be the same. Laws of light is going to be the same. And how difficult is it to write that into an algorithm? And how difficult is it to plug that algorithm to a virtual reality or an artificial reality? And these are the fundamental things that only a lighting designer or someone who has an understanding of light can bring to that whole perspective. So I think the whole prospect of AI and virtual reality and gaming and metaverse is exciting. We just need to tap into that untapped market for all of us as a community together.
You know, um, I'm passionate about glare. I've been that all my life, and now I'm sitting on the technical committee in the CIE to find out how we can measure glare. If we can find out, at least it's a long ongoing project, but it's super cool to be with these bright guys. And the challenge in is that it's so important, so difficult to transmit because in VR it's just a dot, and when that dot blinks, we say now it's glary, but you can't say that to people. Imagine it's glary. How do you go about that? That doesn't really work. So, do you think we will get the sufficient brightness and high resolution? It's just a tech question, or do you think it's a more fundamental question if we can recreate our biggest challenges visualizing glare, which we can't right now?
Glare is something which is a problem which has not yet been solved. If you talk about it, there is disability glare and there's discomfort glare. But
Yeah, I'm talking about
what is the
discomfort glare primarily.
yeah, yeah. So what is discomfort is something which I'm again in a project that I'm really struggling with because there's a jewelry store where there's a lot of sparkling objects that are being displayed, and I did the lighting design, and I designed in such a way that there will be not much of glare happening from the light fixture. But the client comes and says, "Oh, what have you done? This is horrible." I said, "What, sir?" "Oh, but there's no glare." I said, "No." He said, "I want glare because when the light comes into my eyes, I know that I've come into something. It's precious. It has to sparkle." So I'm like, what is glare? I don't know. So it's so
Yeah,
subjective. It depends people to people.
yeah. There are many things we can take a grip on. So I was just like to touch on the your article. Your highest score is the essence of lighting religious buildings, and it's a bit linked to the students I'm doing who do is their cultural issues. Do you think if there are something specific to think about in when you do religious buildings besides an office in a different location?
Religious buildings are probably one of the most challenging buildings to design for. In all the religious buildings that I've worked for, because uh, religion has so many connotations. If you look at, there are so many different religions, firstly, and each religion sees light in a completely different manner. In Christianity, for that matter, you need a lot of light. But if you look at Hinduism, the core temple, they want darkness, they don't want light. So that's something which is it's very important for a designer or a student of design who's looking at religious buildings need to study that aspect of light, what light role plays to that specific religion, and then design accordingly.
But it's also a question of accepting cultures and being humble, because very often you hire somebody who should jump in and do the lighting design, and it's especially in religion, it's a sensitive subject sometimes, and you flash up, because I was writing down here light, because to me light is goodness, it's the holy light, it's everything beautiful, and now you just put me in the face, bang, here's something where darkness is essential, and I already feel a little bit ashamed, think, didn't see that coming. So, and I've even worked with it many times as well. So I don't know how we go about it besides being very humble and wanting to do the best for people.
I mean, that's what you need to understand the core of each religion, because, like I said, in Hinduism, the core temple, it's called the Garbhagriha, where the womb is in the actual translation is the womb. A womb is dark when a baby is born. He's in the womb, he or she is in the womb, and it's darkness. And from darkness, the comes out to light. So the core center is darkness and then coming into light. But then a lot of other religions say moving towards the light. So
Yeah.
it's not that light is bad or good. It's just that you need to understand how light plays a role in every space. So that is something that needs to be understood. So nothing is bad or good. Firstly, that you need to move away from that kind of a nomenclature that we have. So it's something which is fixed behind our mind. So that is something which we need to give away. And then try to understand the spacing, the modulating of light within that space based on how religion says.
I was part of a project with a Swedish lady who did something about they called it the poetics of the place, and we should do lighting for a space. And her vision was that we went there and we were sitting down there, and somehow we would get an insight in what kind of light the space required, or actually asked for in a way. And I wrote an article where I said the most important thing for a lighting designer is a camping chair, so you can go there, flip up your chair, and sit there and wait until you
Yeah.
suddenly know how you go about it. And it's hard because people, what a ridiculous! I need a lux meter, a luminance meter, a computer. No, you really don't. You just need somehow to get in touch with the place. I think it's a
Yes.
part of a spiritual feeling.
Yeah. See, that's a concept called place making. So how does a space become a place? A
Okay.
space is a dead space. It has to become a place. And the process of doing that, it's called place making. And
Okay.
that can happen only when you understand the spirit of that place. So you need to go there, experience it. Like you said, a camping chair, sit, observe, get the whole feel of it, get your hands dirty, get your feet dirty, walk around. And that's when the place making happens.
It's actually one of the conclusions that the master students came up with, that the first priority is if you at any way have the possibility to go there. And that's where my dilemma is, because we talk about all the fancy gadgets, all the networking, all that, but there are some things you only can get when you are there. But when I
Yes.
work with you, for instance, and you tell me I have been there, then you can relay it to me, because we know each other, we know each other's values, we know how we look at lighting design. So I think maybe a network of lighting design people might be able to get that message flowing.
Certainly. I mean, see, we have this conversation. It's great to have a conversation online, but nothing like meeting you over a cup of coffee and discussing this in person, because nothing
Yeah,
can replace that. So, yeah.
I totally agree. I just have my closing questions for you, because we've talked for a long time now, Amardeep, and I'm really grateful for your time. I'm getting a little bit older now. I've passed 60 years, and what about old
You
lighting
look,
designers? What can they
you
do?
look 40. You look 40.
Thank you very much. I'll send you the money we agreed on later. But but what do you think? except from education, because I love to teach, and I got nice feedback from my students. They think it's great, but is there something you could give me a hint? What should I do for the next 10 years instead of spreading the happy news like we do here?
Have you ever considered doing a PhD in lighting?
How Ellen pushes me, and I say no every time, because I've met people who are PhD, and I think you guys, you are amazing on a different level. I can tell you that. So I've considered it and I've put it aside. But thank you very much. You lined
Because
up.
the reason why I'm saying is that Christopher Cuttle, he just
Yeah, I
recently
know.
completed his PhD thesis.
I
So
think he was
age is
81,
no bar.
isn't he?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, yes.
it's so amazing.
So, so that is
But what?
one. And I mean, have you picked up a hobby? Now, I've just started, you see the guitar back there? I've just started learning the guitar. So I'm
Oh
just
my
trying to
God.
see, is there any way I could just write songs, play music on lighting? So I'm just trying to branch out in different ways. So all this
Now
is
I.
part of my retirement plan.
And that's where I would ask you, where do you see yourself in 15 years? Are you playing songs on the guitar about lighting?
I mean, there's so many things that I want to do. So I don't know, maybe if you're playing songs on the guitar, maybe do some hip hop dancing, uh, do some yoga on the Himalayas. So many things. I have a long
It's
bucket list.
wonderful.
So
It's Amardeep. It's wonderful to talk with you in real life. It's super. Today has been exceptionally nice to talk to you. I admire you a lot, and I'm grateful for our friendship and everything you have inspired me to go in the right directions. Once in a while, if I've been a little bit difficult to see what way to go, so I just
likewise,
want to thank you
likewise.
very much for. I just want to thank you very, very much for participating. It's been a pleasure, and I hope we see each other somewhere in the world soon again, Amardeep. Thank you very much.
For real, yes. And it's been a pleasure. The pleasure has been all mine. And thank you, Get a Grip on Lighting, again for hosting me. Thank you. Bye bye.
Well, I'm sure you enjoyed that conversation between Amardeep and Henrik on the conversation series here on Get a Grip on Lighting. But before we let you go, I want to tell you a little bit about a great partner of this show from the beginning, and that's Keystone Technologies. First, you go to KEYSTONETECH.com. That's KeystoneTech.com. Light made easy, Greg.
That's right, and they have been a great partner, and both organizations have grown because of it. The partnership that we have, the knowledge that we gain from this show, and then that they also gain in turn from the marketplace, and come together with great product that's needed in the lighting industry.
If you're a lighting distributor or electrical distributor, you got to get Keystone in your quiver, one of your arrows. You need those guys. Light made easy, retrofit kings, that's right. And of course, we want to tell you about the National Association of Innovative Lighting Distributors, the presenter of all this media that we create here in Get a Grip Studios. And we're having our convention September 13th through 16th in Dallas, Texas, and we're inviting you to come down, check it out. We have a beautiful lineup of speakers, great topics. We're doing a factory tour. We're doing a distribution center tour. It's going to be a really hot 3 days with Nail down in Dallas, Texas. So please join us there. And of course, always join the association. Why wouldn't you? Come on, go to nald.org. In my opinion, humble opinion, the most dynamic association right now in lighting, moving the speed of light. That's right. Go to nald.org. Thanks for listening.